Hi everybody, welcome to my latest podcast called Research Story. I would like to share with you what I have done in the field and why. Let me take you on a journey into social norms and financial inclusion. Haven't you always wanted that? We will start today with an abstract of one of my interviews, so listen up. Yeah, I would take it all. If my husband has kept money without my knowledge and we need it, because we are in hunger and in poverty, I will take it all. And he cannot ask me about it. And what if your husband has asked you about money that he's kept in the house because it belonged to his friend, but he didn't tell you about it? Well, then I would say I didn't see it, because we were not together when you put it there. Katete, Eastern Province, Zambia. Today is 24 January. Tandiwe is holding the moral case deliberation discussion with the women's group in Bangombe village. We are asking these women all sorts of questions about the concept of saving money in secret, alone, without the knowledge of their spouse. At this point, we were inquiring what those women would do when they found money in their house which is not theirs, and of which they had no knowledge. The women are playing around with the question a bit, laughing, but there is a level of honesty when they say that they would take the money without telling their spouse about it. I mean, their spouse didn't tell them about it either, right? But this is not necessarily what I want to share with you today. In a bit, you will hear the second part of this interview fragment and try to see if you understand what happens to the atmosphere there. You as a wife, when you find that money, you are supposed to say to your husband, you should have told me that you were keeping your friend's money in the house, so that I know where it is. Women, the reason why husband and wife hide from each other is because when one of the two earn money, they don't reveal it to each other until the other asks about it. The lady you just heard, we will call her Madam P or MP, is an acquaintance of one of the members of the research team who organized the interviews. MP is closely connected to the chief, who owns a lot of land in the village and also far, far out there. She's very well known in the whole of the chiefdom, also because she used to be the community elected representative at the district council. Madam P was part of the community mobilization of this research, something that I'm very grateful of. MP was part of the pilot discussion we held 2 days earlier. That was fine too. Except then that she got 3 phone calls and she answered them within the church, which messed up my audio file. Now, MP was part of another moral case deliberation, something that I did not enjoy so much. You see, MP takes over the answering of this question, even though she's not really part of the interviewees. She kind of invited herself. She told me afterwards that the other women sometimes did not understand the questions well, so that she had to step in and give the actual answer, or the truth. But it's telling that she answers a question with what those women should do and how they should behave in this situation, which contradicts with what the women say they would do. Should versus would. It seems, though, that MP tries to convince me how the women behave in a way which is seen as good and proper by her, the community representative. In this setting, we can see her as the embodiment of the social norms with regards to money-related behavior, and her speech as the outwardly performance of these norms. So then, what are social norms, and what does this intervention mean? This clip is taken out of one of the 4 moral case deliberation interviews the research team and myself conducted. More about this method of interviewing later, as I want to take you into my topic first. The overall question of my research is to find out how a certain norm, a social norm, is embedded in society and what it means to deviate from this social norm. Every society has its own set of formal rules, like laws, and informal rules, like social norms. Social norms are closely connected to expectations. Expectations about how others should behave, and expectations that others think that we should behave in a certain way. So we expect that other people think of us behaving in a certain way. In addition, norms are to a certain extent left to interpretation, and there is no clear boundary of where personal norms end and social norms begin. Yet in the field of inclusive development, and here specifically in the financial inclusion debate, social norms seem to hold an important place. If the social norm is holding in place an asocial practice, then that social norm should be changed to come one step closer to a more inclusive society. Within the specific topic of my research, the social norm that is possibly holding an asocial practice in place is that it's not allowed to save money in secret from your spouse. Saving should be done together with the husband and the wife so to achieve goals, like sending the children to school or building another room to your house. The asocial practice that might be kept in place is inequality, in the sense that men hold more freedom and agency than women, because there are almost no repercussions for men transgressing. If a man is found with money that his wife does not know about, it is normal. If a woman is found with money her husband does not know about, she must be a prostitute, or have at least 10 boyfriends, or gotten that money otherwise from dirty hands. If a husband keeps in secret money he will use for drinking beer and his girlfriends, the woman cannot do anything about it. If the wife saves up the leftover grocery money without telling her husband, she's endangering her marriage. Even though the consensus is that no one should be keeping in secret, different things hold for men and women. That seems unfair to me. And who decides that? So if we follow the reasoning I mentioned above, we should change the norm to that it is good or at least acceptable for husbands and wives to save on their own, to provide the space where women can claim more agency. Simple, right? Well, you might have felt this coming. No, it's not that simple. A social norm is never alone. In most cases, social norms are competing with each other and with other social constructs, and from that our behavior follows. So the aim of my research initially was to find out for whom it was accepted to save in secret. Well, that I can tell you in 5 sentences. First, it is not allowed for anyone. Second, women whose husbands are drunkards, they can save in secret. 3, husbands whose wives are careless, they can save in secret. 4, for those where there is no unity in the relationship, they will save in secret. And the last 5, it is not allowed for anyone. I do hope that the duality and the contradiction did not escape you. Duality and contradiction, 2 of my favorite concepts in the world. When I was younger, my parents used to say that I should have been a boy, because I was always behaving like one. Playing with a football, playing with other boys, playing in the dirt, never wanting to wear a dress, all those things. And when they said that to me, I was happy, because I didn't want to be like a girl. Not that I needed to be a boy physically, but you can thus be a boy when you're behaving like one, perfect. And I have always wondered who defines and assigns behavior. And when you consciously choose to behave differently, then you are still being influenced by that norm because you're avoiding it with effort. In class, when I was reflecting on what elements of my childhood didn't change when I grew up, I said I still don't like to be associated with a girly girl, or whatever that may mean. Social norms influence our behavior directly or indirectly. But through new generations and migrations, social norms are influenced and changed too. This is because those social expectations I mentioned earlier, they are changing. We are not always sure what others expect from us and what we expect from others when they are strangers to us and do not immediately seem to act according to the customs and norms we are acquainted with. Transgression or eluding of the norm happens in a conscious manner, or at least more conscious manner. You can imagine what other people who do follow the norm think. But if there's not enough social pressure for you to keep to the norm as well, then it can be that you decide to act in a way that follows your self-interest. Let's quickly recap to the interview fragment you heard earlier. Women, they say, when we find money that our husbands save in secret, we will take it. But the norm, or NP, says that even though people do it, women, they shouldn't do it. She says, when you do find it, take the high road, discuss it, and say, okay, this is how you should behave, husband. But the women, they see a more beneficial option happening right in front of their nose, and they will take the money. So, it is often the case with transgressions or norm illusion that behavior that is proscripted by the norm might be more beneficial for the individual. And when there is a chance of acting this way without direct sanctions, individuals can easily be tempted to behave in the way they prefer. With social norms, we can thus say that there is a conflict between the individual and the group interest, as well as there being a personal ethical dilemma to sometimes behave against your personal benefits. And during a different class, our group was introduced to the method of moral case deliberations. This is a format of holding a discussion that is originally used in the medical field to make a decision in an ethical dilemma, like ending treatment of a patient in a coma. The specific setup consists of 8 to 12 participants, a case presenter, and a facilitator. After the introduction of the case, the group formulates the moral question and the dilemma at stake, as well as making sure that every participant can place him or herself in the situation of the presenter. The case is then analyzed in terms of perspectives, values, and norms. There we have them. And there's always an opportunity to look for alternatives. Then every participant makes an individual choice, which is discussed in the whole of the group, and from this discussion the conclusions are drawn up and the presenter might be helped in making his or her decision. So in that class we discussed a case amongst ourselves, and it was not related to a medical ethical dilemma, but a judiciary one. I was inspired by this format and how well it worked within our group, and so I wanted to test it in the field of social norms and financial inclusion. My aim was that we together in the groups, the men and the women's groups, we would identify the social norm. So what exactly is that social norm with saving in secret? But at the same time, I wanted to know what adhering and violating of that norm actually means. I wanted to figure out in what ways the norm on not saving money in secret is ingrained in people's minds, what concept they attach to it, and what other norms are part of that equation. Norms are said to be followed when there is a sufficiently large subset of the context community we're talking about following that norm. There is no definite number because norms are group and area specific. Some norms stretch over borders, but others are confined to peer groups only. And on top of this, people can have different interpretations of social situations, and I can recognize something as a norm, which for you is either a convention or a descriptive norm. Norms and other social constructs are often dynamically competing with each other, which adds another layer of complexity onto this topic. Some norms are keeping in place behaviors that endanger health and happiness. For example, open defecation or child marriage or a larger inequality between husband and wife. It is interesting to see how these norms are embedded in society, which concepts people attach to them, and how they hinder social development, because they keep in place that asocial practice. It is interesting for developmental policymakers especially to understand how these practices are kept in place and why. In that way, those policymakers can design their policies in the right manner to make them as beneficial and efficient for those whom they are intended for. So the data that I gather through those moral case deliberation style interviews, I use as norm confirmation and explanation. The data tells me what is good and appropriate behavior. It becomes clear to me how social norms are valued and at the same time deviated from by basically everybody, depending on personal values people claim to have. Everyone in the area of my research understood and knew that one cannot save in secret from the spouse. Yet everyone can at the same time give at least 3 or more reasons why or when it is possible anyway. So there is that big duality again between what is said to be the norm and what the majority or the sufficiently large subset of people actually do. It would just be a mistake to only look at what is said to be the norm when one is writing up a developmental policy, because the norm is not the same as reality. And it is exactly like Madame P in the beginning said. She knows the reality is that people hide from each other. Spouses, they hide from each other. But she wants, for the record, to state that it's not the right way to behave. She is triggered to state the norm, even though she might not understand, she might know that it's not gonna be more than that. It's just a statement. So saving in secret is possible in this context community when the spouse is a drunkard, or when the spouse is careless, or not upholding other important norms such as role fulfillment, taking care of the household, taking responsibility for the children. However, saving in secret is never allowed. It is allowed, but it isn't allowed. You get it? Officially, it's not allowed. The public space and the public sphere cannot let it happen. And that is why, when it is brought to the light, there must come penalty or sanction. For example, the elders sometimes are called in, and then the suspect, the person who has done it, has to explain his or her case. But amongst some, it is accepted. In some savings groups for women only, or they're also for men only, it can happen that some of them are saving in secret from their spouse, or adding some extra money of which he or she has no idea. These are transgressions of the norm as well, but they are compliance to other norms, such as not wasting money, because wasting money seems to be the worst behavior possible, and it's a lot worse than saving in secret. So far, my research shows that there's no asocial practice kept in place by the social norm itself. However, the social norm is not reality. Even though people say that both men and women should not save in secret, this claim holds a lot stronger for women than for men. We see this in the carrying out of the sanctions when transgressions have taken place. There's definitely inequality between men and women. But this does not hold women back from saving in secret if other values and norms are more of direct importance, such as responsibility taking and reciprocity. It does mean, though, that they are more vulnerable in the sense that because of their gender, they receive a different treatment and they can a lot easier lose dignity, faith, marriage, respectability. If I may answer my own question now too, I would say the same as many of my participants said. The acceptance of saving in secret depends on the relationship with and the behavior of your spouse. Should I do it? Well, I think it's good to always have ownership over some money yourself. Would I do it? I don't know. I would definitely want to have the freedom and the right to do it. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I hope it kept you thinking and started you thinking about all those norms which are around you, of which have influence on you, but you might not be entirely sure how and why. Think about it. Maybe look into it once.